So we're at the International Slavery Museum, and it feels very poignant as to why Black Voices Cornwall are here in Liverpool today. I think it's going to be really interesting to learn a little bit more about slavery and the connections to Britain, and specifically in Liverpool. So yes, how do you feel about being here today?
Yeah, of course. I think Liverpool was one of the most poignant and biggest slave ports in the UK, and so I think that's really interesting and important for us to be here and to bear witness to that.
Definitely.
I didn't know what to expect, to be honest. I was I think because I was occupied with getting stuff on camera and documenting it to the best of my ability, I kind of wasn't really present, and it wasn't until I actually got in and there was a couple of particular installations that kind of brought me crashing back down to earth and reality. So so there wasn't really much thought going in, but once I was in, that's when reality really hit home.
So which were those installations?
So for me, it was that first seeing the shackles, because you can look at some things and they hit differently for each of us, I think, but it's the knowing that there was somebody in them for me, and probably multiple people in the same set of shackles. So that was the first one, and the second one was the Ku Klux Klan.
Yeah.
Uniform, the hood, the emblem. that really kind of got to me. And again, it's the knowing that someone wore that, and what their sentiments, what their thoughts were, what their feelings towards people of colour were.
Did you read the caption?
Yeah.
Did you read the final bit of the caption?
I didn't. What did it say? Do you remember?
The thing that got me about the last bit of the caption was what felt like the person that had donated it, the distinct, it's from this place, it was from a friend of a friend of it, trying to almost articulate it, trying to express how far away this person had got hands on it before it was donated, and it was nothing to do with it, but saying as many times over, it's from this family of a friend, or it's very interesting.
So is that for you about them trying to distance themselves from it? It's like, I'm donating it, but I have nothing to do with this.
And this is why. It's like, okay.
That just leaves me with so many questions. What was the thought process from the previous owner? What made them think that you would want this particular item?
Or is it how does it still exist? Just kind of that's
Because racism still exists.
I mean, physically, how does it still physically exist?
Yeah. Although I think it's good that it does exist, because that's the living memory of it, rather than it being an academic memory. It's a living, real memory.
Yeah.
I think I went through a kind of, in that the film that is sectioned off, that's really horrific. I literally walked in and I was triggered and close to tears and had to walk out within a second, and then having the real happy vibes when I saw that statue of Equiano. So that was probably emotionally for me, those were the two main things on an emotional realm. But it was nice to see in there the things that are positive, to hold on to those.
What was it like for you, Joel, being in there? Because Helen, day in, day out with this, and probably you too to some extent. But from your perspective, what was it like being in there?
It was heavy, even for me.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine how heavy it must be. So,
Why do you say even for you?
I think probably because I just don't have to deal with the day-to-day impacts or racism. I actually felt it, if it makes sense, rather than just seeing it. I think the last one was the Merry Christmas one that rang out. I don't know if it's the same for you, because you were stood there for a while. Just how it is just using them as property.
Yeah, it was like a human billboard, wasn't it? It was like
human Christmas
you
card.
know, and I said to Abby, I said that those individuals probably had no concept at the time what Christmas even meant to the fullest extent what it was. It's just that additional form of branding again, isn't it?
And that's something that's like, that bit is like really easy to just not get, walk past, not get it, you know, so.
And I think that's when we talk about like rebuilding the narrative, I think that's a really important part of it. Like Abby said, like that woman that kind of was laughing at the fact that it said Merry Christmas, but what she doesn't or couldn't or hasn't experienced or appreciated is the impact that has on other people watching that and looking at that in its truest form, and the impact that has. And I wonder, you know, if she was part of this conversation now, whether or not she would have the same view.
I think the context of that is actually quite gross, because it's dehumanizing it. That laughter is perpetuating that narrative in any context, and should and could have, and obviously maybe not necessarily the space, but should have been called out, because it does, absolutely, because it dehumanizes those people. And the thing that for me that really took hold was there was a couple of images, but mostly the brutality, and the image of the iron mask that was wrapped around the
gag.
Kind of the thing that. Well, no, that there was physically an iron mask.
Oh, the full mask. Yeah.
The full mask. And it is that complete objectifying of person, of individual, of identity, that no identity, no ability to have thought. It was, this is complete control, and humility is taken away. That kind of, when you're just saying that someone did that is exactly the same. It's no different in my eyes.
It's appreciating as well, isn't it, the difficulty, particularly for the people of colour that are in that space, already probably triggered to the max, to then have to make the judgment call. Do I call this out? Yeah. Especially like, you know, you've got your BBC hat on, and it's like, well, what we do is we call it out all the time, but when you're in the space in the moment, already feeling like super vulnerable, it's so hard to find the courage the extra courage, not just to be in the space, but then to potentially engage in what could be a confrontational dialogue with someone that is just uneducated. And it's that really kind of split-second judgment call that we have to kind of say, actually, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to protect self right now.
Yeah.
Because I am feeling vulnerable, I am feeling triggered, and there isn't anyone in my immediacy to be able to kind of advocate for me in this moment.
Yeah.
And again, it just adds to that sense of burden then, doesn't it? Because we come out and go, no, like shoulda, coulda, woulda, and it's like, but no, and it's that constant kind of perpetual conflict, isn't it, of do I, don't I?
I think it is very much a split-second decision, and I think because as I was staring at it, there's like tears running down my face, and I just turned and stared at her with the tears running down my face, and I thought, this is all I can give.
Yeah.
I think for me, where the Ku Klux Klan outfit was, next to that was like a video, and I think that's what I sat there and watched it about 3 times. And I just think it just hit me the most.
Was that the global inequality?
No, the one with the newsreels and stuff.
Yeah,
newspaper.
it was just showing like
Racism and discrimination.
newspaper articles and just horrifying pictures. And in the drawer there was these articles, well not articles, like what used to be adverts or like books, just humiliating black people. And I was just so shocked of how, like, me thinking that people have probably read them books to their children and sitting in front of the TV laughing, knowing that these are human beings. And it's just, I don't know, it's just horrific and unquestionable and disgusting.
I think it's difficult to comprehend the evil and lack of empathy in people, like, as a group. I mean, just thinking, like you're saying about the books and television shows, it's like, doesn't it, like, there obviously wasn't a majority of people that thought that it was wrong until it got to a point where black people had to keep screaming from the bottom of their lungs that this is, like, still really wrong. Just difficult to comprehend. Lack of empathy. And I think nowadays there's a lot more empathy and a lot more consideration for people's emotions, well-being, identities. So I think it's getting somewhat better, but yeah, seeing all of those protests and black people getting strangled by the police in those videos, and I still need to process what we just walked into.
Self is really hard though, isn't it? Like knowing that, like, there's going to be some time and like reflection time around this as well, and having to then re-traumatize ourselves almost, just having to go through that process again to try and decompress, and it's just so difficult. I smile because of the irony in it, that you go into the physical space and that's bad enough, but then I think sometimes coming back out and reflecting back on those feelings and those emotions while you're in there can sometimes be even worse. And I don't know what your view is on this, Eni, but sometimes, particularly around trauma, sometimes the memory of trauma can be more traumatic than the actual trauma itself.
Certainly can be re-traumatising or add to the trauma.
I think what I would have liked to have seen, or to have been aware, and it may be a consideration that they have, but if not, why not? That where, like, the duty of care to visitors of colour particularly that could be triggered.
In the entrance there were a few screens that talked about kind of etiquette, and that what happened to you would have come under that, in terms of being aware of other people around you, and your response to pieces might trigger something in, oh, you took a picture of
Yeah, I took a picture of it.
Yeah, so it was there, and it was on a few screens, so it wasn't just once, it was repeated. So yeah, it's a real shame that still happened, even though that was there.
And I think maybe what I would have liked to have seen is like an actual, like, a dedicated space for people to just go and sit and be, like, completely neutral, to just like a timeout kind of space.
So where we were at the end, there was a refuge area.
Yeah.
But it wasn't made evidential, and I didn't go into it, so I don't know whether it was
Open.
whether it was a space that actually you could.
So I've said it's my second time here. I've been here before, and as people have been saying, stuff has changed. But one of the things that the sign is still there, but the what you do there is kind of slightly dismantled. So there was before you came back down the stairs, so it was kind of at the entrance, but also the exit was a space to sit and reflect, and you could record your thoughts on what you've just kind of seen and witnessed, or you could write something. And they used to have like postcards of what people had written, and also video of what people had said.
Nice.
Like, but that was gone. I did look for it, but yeah.
How was it for your second time?
Yeah, I think I kind of experienced it and come to it probably from a different space. It's probably slightly linked to what I said at the start in terms of my relationship with slavery is thinking about Nigeria, the Nigeria-Ghana, and that side of it, the being colonised, the kind of tribes being pitted against each other in order to acquire people to then take into slavery, the slave trails that there were, the parts of when we were talking about the ocean before. Remember one time going to Nigeria and like my relatives, and we wanted to go to the beach because we were like, oh, I want to go to the beach, and they're like, well, how would you want to go to the sea? Like the sea's dangerous, and you know, and kind of going and kind of seeing people kind of worshipping the sea, and kind of that was when I was much younger. But now thinking back on it, actually, if what the sea signifies to those people is that you go there and you die and you don't come back, and you get taken there by others. You know, it's not a place you would go of free will and choice. So I was quite, so when I was walking through, there were the kinds of things that I was kind of thinking about. And drawn to. Yeah.
I think it's quite. It can be really easy, can't it, to forget those additional triggers, like the association to the ocean for those kind of West Africans.
Do people think that this has been quite an important part for us as BBC, as an organisation, or has it just been for people as individuals, or both?
I think so. I think that what's often, I don't know about often, and I don't know how much focus the education part of it highlights, but is the African end of things. I think this is when we talk about kind of slavery and the legacy of slavery, we're often talking about either Europe, America, talking about black people, often Anglo black or American black people, and Caribbeans and everyone that's in the diaspora. But what about the people that were left? And I think that's often not talked about, and there's a legacy there, and there's
what they showed with that, the economic impact
that
just blew my mind.
Oh God, yeah. I was
like,
so glad that was there.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the kind of thing that is absolutely forgotten or minimised or downplayed. Like, oh yeah, those countries, well, that's because they're not they're not able to progress themselves. It's like, it's not. It's because you came over, you took the resources, you then left them in a worse state than they were, because they were prospering before the Europeans got there, just in a different way, just looked different. And then because of the way kind of global politics, global economies work, they then got left behind because, and I think that is part of the legacy as well, that is often forgotten. I was so glad that was there.
And that draws a really interesting point, doesn't it? When we talk about Black history, and particularly around the impact of enslavement, that it's now like half an hour ago being in there is part of this Black history, because like you said, and rightly so, the impact is still very much real. It's tangible and it's ongoing. So this, and again, like you say, Helen, about changing the narrative, it's that actually it didn't stop at the abolition of slavery. Like, because it's still happening now. It might present differently, it might feel slightly different. There might be a slightly softer approach to the language and terminology around how we're explaining this, but the exploitation is still very much here.
And it is about exploitation. It's about exploitation, and it's also about forgetting, you know, for instance, the Windrush or the burkas, or, you know, whoever it was that Western countries decided needed to come and help them to either develop, to win their wars, to whatever it was. And then just, you've done your bit, thank you, goodbye. You know?
Not maybe even a thank you.
Yeah. Actually, worse than a thank you, I'm going to strip you of your citizenship now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to make you worse than nothing, you know. They tell you, help her. We're ready to party. And like you say, Marcus, it is still ongoing because there are still countries that refuse to say sorry or, you know, make reparations. Still astounded by what, you know, what's his name, blonde-haired moron, said about the Benin gold.
Boris or
Boris.
Yeah.
You know, and that's my country, that's my heritage, that's where my family are from, and saying that it's better in London because we won't be able to look after it. You know, that's the reason. That's the reason to not.
Yeah, who is we? Because it ain't going to be a table full of black people. You know.
Yeah.
And again, this ongoing making decisions for others with no consultation.
And that's systemic racism.
Yes.
Because that still holds the fact that we as the white dominants
Yeah.
can do the best job
Yeah.
of protecting,
Exactly.
looking after, whatever.
Exactly.
And therefore that systemic racism continues.
And the white saviorism that comes with that as well.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, let us help you look after what's yours.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, but we managed for thousands of years before you rocked up on our shores.
I really liked the one quote, and I really hope that more people see it and take notice of it, is that everyone, regardless of how white you are or think you are, is a descendant of Africans, because that's where the first people came from. That's where people first stood up on two legs, you know, as a human race.
It's been super insightful, challenging, emotional, a little bit numbing in times. But worth it, I think, from an organisational perspective as well. Just that greater depth of understanding of impacts, being able to see the modern day effects of enslaved Africans,